Welcome to Slackin' Off with Brady Slack.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Slackin' Off. I'm excited for today's guest because I was asked to be on his podcast about 2 months ago. This individual hosts the podcast called The Money Game. And on that podcast episode, we talk taxes. But today, I don't know that we'll talk too much taxes. But you'll find really quickly, just like everyone else on this podcast, we do everything but slack off. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Ty Thorne. How's it going?
Oh, dude, grateful to be here, man. It's be fun.
I'm excited to have you. You and I have not, to be honest with you, we haven't known each other that long. We've had a couple interactions. We were at a mastermind event. That was about a year ago, wasn't it? With Brody Fawcett
about
down
exactly
in
a
Vegas.
year ago.
Yeah. But tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself. You're in sales. I mean, you hustle. You've got your podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit today. I want to highlight that because you've got some great things going on that. But tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, what you like to do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. So, first off, right now, kind of my active role is I manage a decentralized sales headquarter for Vivint. So, I'm. It feels like I'm a startup because I am the tip of the spear in Kansas City as far as
Yeah.
Vivint goes. So it's our resources are different, which is fun. I really enjoy that. I think it's the right fit for me. But still under the umbrella of macro Vivint. And then with that, I've been doing that for 7 years now. And I think kind of like anybody who gets into the game of sales or entrepreneurism leads into the investing realm, started playing pretty heavy in real estate investing about 4 years ago. Created some partnerships. Actually gonna go live with a real estate fund specifically on Midwest properties that cash flow here in about 2.5 weeks. Finishing stuff with SEC attorneys and make sure everything's dialed. So we're
Congrats.
super stoked on that. Yeah, dude, that's been a wild ride to like actually go through the compliance and regulatory on that. But other than that, I think, dude, I would say a lot of what I do is just I'm kind of just a competitor at heart. And I think post sports, post everything, business, the game of investing is kind of like the game you never have to stop playing. And
Yeah.
a lot of my motivation, there's really not. I was at an event the other day and somebody kind of asked, why do you want to go so big? And kind of kept challenging the things that I was bringing up. And it was awesome. I really liked it because it made me introspect a lot. And I was like, probably at the root, and there's a lot of ancillary reasons why I do what I do for impact and obviously provide for my family. But I honestly just want to know what I'm made of. I want to know
Yeah.
what I'm capable of. I want to know what the end mark is. I'm fascinated with how far can I go? What can I develop within the means and bounds of the principles of my family and time and freedom and control. But I think it's fun.
So it is not surprising the amount of output you're able to have. And I think a lot of that is contributed to the competitive nature that you have. And there's a theme. I grew up playing competitive soccer. I played football in high school. I was gonna go play at the collegiate level, and then I got home from a church mission. It didn't feel right for me. But with even other podcast guests that I've had or that I've been featured on or a guest on, the individuals that have played or come from a background of competitive sports, they understand that there's a grind. They are disciplined and they're able to get to a high level because they understand that there's a grind and that discipline. How has that grind and that discipline affected the success that you've experienced thus far?
Oh man. Uh, I think it's every level I go further and further, I feel like my paradigm opens of what the secret sauce really is. And it's always discipline, right? It's really one of the guests I had on my podcast, a guy who's unbelievably successful, does estate management for billionaires. And I had asked him, like, dude, give me the silver bullet. Like, what the freak do these guys have that I don't? What? And
Yeah.
he just an unbelievable, like, laser focus over a longer period of time. And my athletics, I think you learn, right? Like, dude, if you want to be unbelievable in athletics, you want to create higher speed, more explosion, you want to get in better shape. Everybody knows what it takes. Everybody
Yeah.
knows you can eat better. Everybody knows you train harder. You got to get the heart, like, but it's simple in theory, but it's hard to execute. And finances, it's honestly pretty simple in theory. Like, it's hard to execute. It's hard to delay gratification of increasing your lifestyle and doubling down. It's hard to reinvest in your business when more cash flows come versus taking it off the table. It's hard to stay hungry when you're getting wins outside of that level. And it's just, I think at every level, there's just incremental sacrifices or discipline that's necessary. The bigger your org goes, you have to be way more deliberate. When you're managing more people to displace yourself and create frameworks and systems, you no longer can rely on your talent of I was good enough to play this role, but if I need a B player to play the A role I served, I've got to be super meticulous and detailed and deliberate in the way that I set this person up to play this game. And so I just honestly, every step of the way, I think building up athletics into business, I'm constantly just, it's awesome because it makes me realize, like, man, I don't have to be Elon Musk IQ to figure this out. I just got to
Yeah.
increase my discipline.
Well, yesterday I was watching a video. This particular video that I watched was in relation to religion. It was a religious leader that we had, that I have, and he was talking about and in paradigm to God and how God doesn't want us to stay the same. And it's funny because you also kind of alluded to this before. In business, it is you cannot stay the same. If you stay the same, you will quickly find yourself behind your competitors and partners because there is always so much um, there's so much growth and things are always changing, but it forces you to change with that growth. One thing that I've learned, and it took me a little bit to learn, that you've kind of also talked about and touched on, is as you continue to change, you realize that there is so much you don't actually know. And in the right situation and the right individual can become so much more successful the quicker that they learn the principle that I don't know everything, so that they give themselves the opportunity to learn more. And I think that's what you kind of just talked about there.
100%. I think uh, I train on this all the time because in my active role, we're bringing college kids in a lot of the time, and mainstream education is programs people to here's your syllabus. At the end of this semester, you're gonna have a final. So you're gonna study, and prepare for this test. But in business, we ask people to flip the script. I want you to take this test that you have no answers to as fast as you can, and then I want you to hit the books. And then I want you to take it as many freaking times as you can, because the faster we can get you to 100% on this test, the quicker we can go on to the next test. And that's scary to some people. But in business, the sooner you can take on that, like, hey, I don't have to know everything. I just have to put myself in a situation where the risk is mitigated for me to take this test, that it gives me the opportunity to go find the information after to make the pivots and the adjustments. But if you're going to study forever before and you need all the answers before you make a move, you'll never invest, you'll never start your company, you'll never grow, you'll never scale, you never move the needle.
I Okay, so let's talk about that for 1 second. So my mom's an educator. Um, I value education. I think education is extremely important, and I think it's undervalued in a lot of situations. Tell me what your thoughts are, because like in your position, and this happens with sales all the time. You got a lot of individuals. I won't call them kids, but because I'm young too. But individuals who are in college in the early phases of college that kind of get a taste of sales, and they see someone who's driving a really nice car, or hey, I've got 2 or 3 investment properties and I'm only 4 years older than you, and they see that and they want that, right? What what is your thought, or what are your thoughts on jumping into it? Because I have jumped into it and I've drinking the Kool-Aid. I love the Kool-Aid, but I still value education. What are your thoughts on that? What do you value? What do you advise, or what do you encourage, or what do you emulate for those in that situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I would say, depends on what are you trying to do, and the scenario is probably different for different
That
people.
that's a great bland answer. I love that.
Yeah, well, the hard thing is it is legitimate though, right? Like if you want to
Yeah,
be
it's
an
true. No,
attorney,
it
like dude,
or a
you've
doctor.
got to be
Yeah,
educated, or even an engineer, right? Like I don't want to be in a building that this guy doesn't know his calculus backwards and
yeah,
forwards. That's scary. Um,
yeah.
but I I do think, especially, I went into the Marriott School of Business, and I think in public education, especially secondary education, from a business development standpoint, everything that's being studied is already happened, and the business world is changing so fast that you have to be playing the game to even have a chance. And so I'm all about education. I'm reading every day, and I'm reading the newest book that comes out. I'm reading market analyses. I'm doing everything I can to get my edge. Ray Dalio talks about it. Everybody who's running a hedge fund, and they're obsessed with reading. Warren Buffett, he reads financials for 4 hours every morning. So I'm obsessed with education. I think if you're going to play the game of business, and from a sales entrepreneur role, executive management role, I think education, the way we talk about, formal education, or what people think of, doesn't prepare you as well as people think it should. I don't think it gives you as much differentiation in the marketplace as you think it will. Um, and I think we see that, right? Like kids come out of college and they get offered 50, 60K. But in today's world, it kind of sucks. Like it's for the cost you put
Yeah.
in to get there, it's not that great.
So you mentioned the word game, so let's just dive into it. Business is a game. I don't.
Hmm.
In my opinion, business is a game. There are game plans. There's the execution of the game plan. There are the results of the game plan. And I can say this with firsthand experience that not always will you win in this game of business, even if you have a good game plan and you execute on that game plan. Um, so let's talk about the money game. Let's talk about the podcast a little bit. Let's talk about the reason behind the podcast, the money game. Talk about some of the guests you've had. I mean, we're going to go broad here, but it's going to be a great conversation. I think. What have you? Why did you? Let's start with this. Why did you want to start the podcast, and why did you want to name it the Money Game?
Yeah. Uh, so as I was doing sales, right, making all these commissions, and I was super blessed. I come from a really entrepreneurial family, and very, very niche entrepreneurial space, where my dad's core business is actually financial publishing. So just the top of the top financial gurus in every sector, real estate, trading, life insurance, whatever it is, like those were our conversations at the dinner table. Very different. We were talking about how to
Yeah,
overfund a IUL policy when I was 15. People are out there trying to figure that out still in their 40s. Um,
sure.
and so it became apparent as I had more and more of these reps coming through, that the general level of financial literacy, and not even from terms of investing, just perspective, right? Like, hey, if you're making 100K, you don't have $100,000 of disposable income. And
Yeah,
somebody who hasn't come, maybe blue collar, and they're the first 200, 300, half mil, or $100,000 earner, they think that they're Kanye, and they're not. Like, you can't drive a Lambo and you make
they've made
200K.
it.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's not that, it ain't that. You got to understand the ratios better. And so I felt super blessed. I just, had exposure to a lot of these different ideas and saw ultra success and different things. I wanted an outlet where I feel so many people's, I call them fake problems because I think a money problem usually is less of a problem, than health or relationships or your spirituality or anything like that. Like if you can write a check for it, I don't know if you ever heard Dean Graziosi say, if you can write a check for it, it's not a real problem. Um,
Yep.
and so the purpose of the money game was just 100%. Hey, let's get these people who actually are killing it, who in that aspect of just the money game, because it is a game, and there's limiting beliefs, there's scarcity beliefs, there's technical things that you just need to know, there's parameters that you need to understand, there's rules to it that are developing that you just have to get. And as an accountant, like, you understand this as good as anybody. Like there are serious things that you can do that will help you astronomically just because the way structure entities. You could make the same amount of income but pay twice as much just because you don't know information that somebody else has. And so I really wanted to create an outlet that served as many people as possible on that side, because no matter who you are, teacher, doctor, attorney, sales rep, entrepreneur, blue collar person, everybody's got to play the money game, and life is actually a little easier if you have a grasp of it. Not everyone's going to go pro,
Yeah.
but like everybody has to play it.
I always say, going on the technical side of things, like numbers don't lie, but I can make numbers lie just by having a different understanding of those numbers. And then I also always say that money is an idea, and whatever your
Mhm.
idea about money is correct. It might be different than my idea, because I have an idea about money, but whatever that idea is, you are correct. Even if you have a very crappy mentality around money, or just think that, you can't ever catch a lucky break, or, you have a hard time finding a good job, or education is hard. And because education is hard, you don't have a good job and you don't make a lot of income. Whatever your idea is correct. Right. And what I've gotten
Mhm.
from listening to episodes of the money game is kind of to back that up. But yeah, lots of people have different ideas about money, but whatever your idea is correct. So that being said, what okay, let's ask this. What have what do you hope so far from the money game? What do you hope your listeners have been able to learn so far from some of the guests you've had?
Yeah, in hope and obviously some of I've had some conversations. I usually get quite a bit of messages after a certain episode. Hey, deeper questions, like when you came on. All these kinds of people were asking me all kinds of stuff, and I love that. And I'm a huge proponent. If you're anybody's a Tony Robbins fan, that your actions are dictated by your beliefs, and the only way to change your beliefs is to get exposure to new information. You If you've never seen an apple fall, you might not ever legitimately understand gravity. And so if you've never heard someone from your lens break a paradigm, make it, you've never seen someone talk about the way they create wealth, the way they save, the way they invest. I'm such a huge believer that if we can just get people to increase the conversations that they have about money by listening to an episode, getting on Google and just creating more exposure, that we can open their lens, create new beliefs that's going to create new action, and they're going to try stuff. And that 100% is my biggest goal, that people are just going to start moving the needle, feel more comfortable. There's definitely a huge taboo, like, ideology around money. Oh man, I'm not supposed to ask my parents, they're not supposed to tell me, I'm not supposed to ask successful people or whatever. And the reality is, all the most successful people I know talk about it all the damn time. Like, and they're
Right.
fearless, right? It's like, dude, you're way better at me than this, I would love to know. And I think the more we can normalize that, like, dude, it doesn't change your worth as an individual in the universe, but people are worth more in the marketplace because they have information and skills that you can participate in. You just need to be willing to ask.
Uh, so my last guest, and his episode will be launching here in another week and a half. His name's Greg Reed. He's a best-selling author. He's head of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We kind of talked about 3 rules of life that he has, and the first one that he said was, seek counsel, not opinion. And his thinking behind that was, if you know, you people need to be more humble. We have all these like fake gurus. We have all these life coaches who don't have a great life, you know, or all these money coaches, but they can't tell you where their money has come from besides the coaching fees that they charge for their coaching. And he talks about just the fact that, like, if more people were able to seek counsel rather than opinion, and opinion comes from those who don't have that, you know, that experience or that expertise, or, you know, the education to back that opinion up. I think a lot of more people would be better off. So that being said, um, what what have you learned? Because we all come from a position where there's always someone who knows more than I do. And I embody that 100%. Even as an accountant, I know a lot. I feel like I know a lot, but there's always people who know more than me. So what have you learned as the host of the Money Game from the guests that you've had on there?
Oh man. Uh, a lot of the guests I target is very specific because it's like I want to learn from this person, and I'm a huge believer in that. Uh, I don't consider myself the smartest person ever. I what my superpower is not that I have like the intellect. I think I'm really good at sifting through information, and I'm willing to try. I
Yeah.
don't care what anyone thinks. So like I'll try. I'll go try it out. But I've had a lot of great strategy that I've learned just from an organization and what it takes to go to levels that I want to go to. And there's probably one of the biggest things, having somebody in front of you, right? Reading somebody's book, listening to somebody's podcast, you can learn a ton. There's an unbelievable amount of great free information or very cheap information out there. But when you get to have that conversation with somebody and feel the energy, and you feel the real, like the reality of their success pushes the weight of what they're telling you in their strategies or in their mentality, and you get to see that person sit across from you, or in the same Zoom room as you, it humanizes the accomplishment to me. And it, no matter how hard or like the reality of what they did to achieve that, just kind of like becomes more tangible to me. So I've had people on who are astronomically more successful than myself, and I love that because it's so cool to see, okay, breaking down where this person's at, it's not impossible, but am I willing to make those commitments and execute at that level for that long to get to where this person's at? And it's humbling and kind of sobering, but it's also very encouraging to know that it's possible.
Do you? This is I started this podcast in the most like the most selfish perspective possible, because I want to learn more and I want to have conversations. Have you ever felt like have you ever felt discouraged that you haven't reached a certain level of success, or things take longer than you think they should? Does that ever go through your mind? And I only ask that because it definitely goes through my mind all the time.
100%. It's funny. I spend so much of my time studying. I'm like obsessed with hedge fund managers right now because I'm starting a fund, and so I
It's trying to
I'm
do
reading
your
like
fun.
the yeah, I'm reading the Carlisle Group, I'm reading Dahlia, I'm reading Kenneth Griffin's stuff. Like I'm just soaking up. Like, what are these guys? What makes these dudes tick? Um, but and then some of our mutual people that I think everyone in our space looks up, the Ed Milet's, the Deans, these, the Andy Frisella, whoever,
Sure.
these ultra personas, and I definitely all the time I'm like, man, I just have no right to put anything out there because even in my respect, right? Like I've done some from a percentage of my age and wealth accrued and income and achievements, it's like good. But I look at that and I think, man, like, dude, how the freak am I ever gonna be that dude? Like there's a place reserved for those people to publish their opinions and their thoughts because they're that guy. Like I don't have any right. And it is sometimes discouraging, but something that's helped me a lot is also those guys, and kind of formulating backwards, and then also knowing that you don't have to be 100,000 steps ahead of somebody to help them. Uh, Running a team has helped me a lot just because of people coming from ground zero and some of the stuff that I'm like, this isn't that magnificent. This is in my head. I'm like, this is almost more common sense. Like, I'm not sure how you don't understand this, or this is pretty elementary, is like life accelerating. And so it's an ebb and flow for sure. But I would say more often than not, I definitely am like, man, I've got a long way to go.
In let's see, I'm trying to think. This was in January. So about a month ago, I was at a group event, a mastermind event in San Diego. And I only knew a couple people when I got there. There was probably maybe 40, 50 people at this event. It was very tight knit. And I get there and there was this older gentleman. I just ended up sitting next to him for a minute. We introduced each other, exchanged pleasantries, and had a small conversation, not even about business. It was just mostly personal. We get about 3 hours into this event and they start to do kind of like some interview segments where they bring people, guests up to interview them. And uh, the host, who happened to be Greg Reed, the last guy that I had on my podcast, he goes, "Hey, can we have so and so come up here?" Um, and this individual who I had just had a conversation with 2.5 hours ago stands up next to me. He's an older gentleman, probably 76, 78, and walks up to the front of the room. And they start to have this conversation, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? Like, I knew his name, but I didn't know who he was. And Greg, he starts interviewing me, and he goes, "Hey, Brian, tell us about this property you purchased yesterday with your wife." And he goes on to say, "Well, yeah, me and my wife closed on a property. It was about $47 million." And I paused. I was like, "Wait, what? Like, let's go back on that for just 1 second." And then, I'm sitting there and I Google this guy. I Google Brian, and lo and behold, this guy's worth well over $1 billion. He has a huge portfolio of real estate, has a couple different businesses. Anyways, his interview gets done. He sits back down. They do a small break, and I go, "Brian, you had like you could have mentioned that you like had a little bit of money, or that that you were a little bit successful." And he looks at me, and this was I've struggled with the question that I asked you prior, and I share this experience because this has helped me just a little bit. He looks at me, he goes, "How old are you?" Like, "I'm 27." And he goes, "Tell me a little bit about your business or your businesses." And I told him about what we've got going on, the accounting firm, we've got a SaaS product that we're working on, and my real estate portfolio. And he goes, "I was almost 40 when I started my first business." And he said, "It's taken me that amount of time to get to the point with where I'm at." You look at people like Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's another good example. He started hustling when he was younger, but he really didn't even start his first successful business till he was almost 30, I believe. Um, and so the thing that I've had to come to terms with, that I think just a lot of people like you and I, Ty, struggle with, and I hope people are able to get some value from what I'm about to say, is I struggle with not getting to the next level only because I'm competitive enough with myself to where I know that that fuels a fire within me to want to get to that next level. But I've also had to be humble enough to learn that time is also important in the equation of time value of money or investing, the long game. And I started businesses at 24 years old. Not all have been successful. Um, Other businesses that I start will probably not be successful, but because of the force of averages, the time that I have in that average could also be beneficial in the long run. And I think a lot of guys, especially in your industry, in the sales industry, they see that shiny object and they think, "I want it, and I want it now, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it." But sometimes we've got to let that time just kind of ride that out. And that's kind of a hard lesson that I've had to learn, that I'm still kind of learning.
It is, yeah, I think it's part of the discipline, I think as well. I'm something that helps me a ton. When I have these, I really try to break down backwards, who has what I want at 10 years in the future, and where were they at when I was at this phase? What was the level of action and execution that led to this? Just try to deconstruct it. And a lot of times it becomes a lot more feasible, but especially when we're so young, we think in terms, of our professional career of less, 10 to 12 years, which is a really short time. And you look at these like
Yeah.
giants that have been masters of their craft for 30, 40, 50, even 60 years. And anyone who understands, especially money, like the compounding effect of money is so crazy when you're talking from an investing standpoint, a portfolio. 1 to 2 years is nothing. Like the crazy exponential rate of return comes in year 25, year 30, when the egg gets big, 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 and it's been paid on for so long. And then it just starts, it looks like it just kind of like goes hyperbolic. And I think the same thing with your skill sets. And I have to like bring myself down to earth a lot with that of like, oh man, this dude started this, but he's 45 and he put 25 years of relationships and due diligence and execution and discipline and habit building. He became that guy that was capable of executing this. It's going to take some time. Like I got to prove myself to a lot of people too. And I think, uh, I don't know if you ever heard Ed and Andy talk about kind of the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 year rooms.
Not in depth, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
That I like makes so much sense to me. And I think about it, especially now, like, when somebody comes to me and they're like, dude, I'm going to be the best guy you've ever had. I'm like, all right, yeah, we'll find out. Cause if you can't make it through a year, like everybody's
Yeah.
so motivated. Right. But it's so true. It's like, if I'm in the 20-year room, I want a guy who, because there's just things you can't fake. You can't fake 20 years of steady effort. You just can't fake it. Anyone can get motivated for 6 months, a year, 3 years, even 4 to 5, but like 10 to 15 to 20, you didn't piss anybody off. You didn't screw anybody over. You kept your word. You failed, but you made up. Like you fixed mistakes, you own stuff. 20 years of a good reputation has this like massive ability to take you places.
But okay, let's talk about that because like I said, I was actually I was corrected, and I had made a comment on the last episode that I did that I'm not necessarily going to apologize for it, but I think I was corrected in my thought that now that I've had a couple of days to think about it, and it's the whole fake it till you make it mentality, right? um, we were talking about with Greg, kind of leading back to that one rule of life that one of the rules of life that he has: seek counsel, not opinion. And we talked about the entrepreneurs that are starting out in a specific incident that had happened at this event that I was at, where someone was starting out and they were trying to explain their business in a way, and they were just using these big vocabulary words and acting like they had it all together. And I said, I think that I said, and I still maybe feel like this a little bit. I feel like there's an aspect of a fake it till you make it. Um, but the way that I think about it now, after I feel like I was corrected, was I don't necessarily feel like it's a fake it till you make it, because I don't feel like you should be faking anything. But I do feel like there's an element of um, expounding upon what you do know to emulate what you want to accomplish. Maybe that's how I will put it. What are your, like, when you hear fake it till you make it, or you hear like those gurus or the people that are starting out, like what are your thoughts, and then what would maybe your advice be to that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel that that comes up a lot, uh, especially recently. I feel like this conversation, kind of the what side you sit on with this, um, and I think a lot of it does have to do with the intention, for sure. I don't love. I think similar to you. I don't think that there's ever a need to fake. Uh,
Mhm.
I think if you're young, you have to do things to position yourself to compete in your space or your sector. And I don't know that that means fake, but I do think that you've got to be willing to really leverage or show the strengths that you do have and the things that you do understand. But I think you have to be really, really real with the things that you don't, and recognize that when you're a first year in a space and you're competing against somebody who's 20 years into their space, that there should be skepticism against the things you say. They're like,
Sure.
you don't have years of execution and winning. So I think from a confidence, it's I would say it's almost like you have to believe you're gonna make it. I don't think that you ever have to, like, fake it till you're that person, but I feel like you have to embody belief that you can play at that level and speak with the belief that you're good enough. But just like a rookie coming into the league, "Hey, I'm gonna step up against LeBron, like, I'm gonna challenge you, but I recognize your 20 years of being the king." I
Yeah.
guess is kinda where I would put it, like, I'm willing to step up to the plate and play any of you players, and I'll compete. And I believe I can win, but I'm not gonna say that I'm that guy yet. Like, I don't hold these titles yet.
So in business, is there, you talk about the 5, 10, 15, 20-year rooms. Um, is there a point to where you would give someone that title of you made it? Is there a title of you made it in your opinion?
It was interesting. I was actually thinking about it the other day. I think in every tier that there's an echelon of you've made it, right? I think when you're in the
Yeah.
5 year, I think there's a step of you've made it to the people below that. And it and I'm always careful because I don't want people to think like because you can be a slapdick for 5 years and you're not a 5 year guy, right? Like it's not about
Oh
surviving.
yeah.
Like and it's not just time. And you can condense time with energy and effectiveness, but you're gonna prove that. But I do think time proves it out and shows your track record more transparently. But I think at every notch, there is an element of you've made it, just like in sports. You know, you're a you made it player in high school when you're elite in that space, but to step into Division 2, Division 1, there's a whole nother level of competition. And then to step into the pros, to step into the all-star circle, to the Hall of Famers, there's a whole nother circle at every level where there is a ton of respect and you are esteemed as that individual until you step into a certain room. And I think most people who are that apex level of player are pretty aware of that.
Yeah. Do you, from the conversations that you've had, do you notice a difference in the level of or the amount of excuses one has compared to another when you start to deal with higher level people?
Oh my goodness. That's eh, I don't think anything screams more wannabe than excuses. There's just I've never the most successful people I have on that, 100 million nets or, deca million net worths or whatever. They're so much more self-confident in their failures and they don't even really view them as fit. It's just it was we lost
It's a
that game.
lesson.
Yeah, like that was just something we messed up on. It doesn't even matter. And
Yep.
their identity isn't strapped to where I see the excuses start to come to is where somebody is trying to project that they hold that position and there's a reason that they're not that person yet or there's a reason that the business isn't there yet or that the body and the fitness and whatever it is that they're talking about isn't there. If it's somebody else's fault, like we have a thing in our team, you can make excuses or you can make money, like, but you can't have both.
I always just say that excuses are like butts. Everyone has one, but to hear it. I think one thing that I've had to learn, one thing I've had to learn too, though, as a leader, as the owner of an organization, or if you are managing a sales team, is that even though some of those problems don't necessarily like that you did not cause some of those problems, they are your problems. And I think the thing that I've seen that we can talk a little bit about, especially as it relates to like a sales organization and what you've been able to accomplish with impact, um, is organizations fail very quickly or very easily when the leader or the owner of that organization is also unwilling to um, take credit or the blame for the actions of those in their organization. And they are unwilling to accept the fact that sometimes that blame falls on them, even if they did not, even if they were not the ones that actually committed the fault. Tell me a little bit about the experiences that you've had in sales and what it is that you try and emulate with your sales teams so that those pitfalls do not come upon you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Ray Dalio's book Principles is probably like my favorite book ever, and he talks a lot about when he was building Bridgewater, just the radical transparency, the radical objectivity that they had, and just the seeking pure truth and then owning that. Um, it's there's no way, at least in my space, for your organization to win if the leader isn't willing to say, training isn't here, it's on me. Area wasn't here, it's on me. Capacity, onboarding, systems failed, management, whatever. It's if you're not willing to step outside the box and get outside of your lens and your tunnel, there's always a way to fix it. And so, learning from his book, he just talks about, I look at my organization as a machine, and there's always something in your machine that needs tweaking. And the more you can unattach like your identity to it and just step out and say, hey, if I don't have the answer to fix this component, who does? How do I find that? Because at the end of the day, like, it's all on me. If we win, great, like the team won. But if we lose, like, I can say, this piece was missing, or this piece was missing, or this element hit the fan, or this macroeconomic condition impacted us, or whatever. But if you're hyper aware and you're looking forward and you're always analyzing your machine, I think that's the key. Like, you've always got to be analyzing what can be fixed, what can be improved, what can be updated. Because, like you said earlier, right? Like, there is no stagnant. You either make change or change makes you. So you've got to be on the forefront of change, even if it's in the side of error, and be willing to fail and be willing to own those opportunities.
So in times where maybe you found that you aren't the best at something, how do you approach that situation?
Yeah, I think the quicker I think this is a misconception. I think that people think not being the best or the highest capacity at every single thing in your organization is a weakness. It's not, and it's ridiculous to think that you could serve every role the best when you have 100 or 150 people in the room. It's just not possible. Um, and you know that, right? Like, I would never try to be my own accountant. I would never be my own wealth manager. Like, I wouldn't be my own attorney. That's just dumb. Uh, and so I think being authentic and being confident is huge for your ability to do that. But the faster you can just say, hey, like, that's not me. I can't do that for you. Like, I'm not your therapist. I'm not your accountant. I'm not your attorney. Like, this is who I'd send you to. Like, I played a role I shouldn't have in that. And that's why we failed. But I think that ownership, and the quicker you can admit, and then also just find who can fix it.
I think a lot of people, to kind of add on to that, I think a lot of people just have maybe the incorrect understanding or assumption that these highly successful people, call it Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whomever, that they do everything. And a lot of times, what I'll do is I love to listen to the Shark Tank or the Dragon's Den, which is kind of the Australian or the English version of the Shark Tank. And it was funny on an episode today that it's funny we kind of went this direction. One of the episodes was there was a young guy who was selling his product, and he was 18 years old, and the sharks were trying to sell him on their ability to mentor him, right? So he went back to the question with these dragons, and he was like, what are you, when you guys talk about mentor, what kind of a mentor are you going to be for me? And it was interesting because even though each of these, there were three gentlemen who were trying to become this mentor figure, even though each of them in their own right could have been fantastic mentors, they talked about their teams that this young individual would have access to. And I thought that was so funny because even as it relates to myself, I am not, like, if you really want to know the truth, I am not the person to talk to if you want to ask questions about financial projections and analysis, or if you want to talk about cash budgeting, right? But I have a partner who is a whiz at it, right? Who is over that for all of our clients. And I thought that was just interesting. And even on a personal level, the team that one has is so important. You know, the we talked earlier about the desire, maybe some of our pitfalls of wanting this or wanting that or trying to emulate or reach a target. And very, very often, my most important team member, my spouse, is the one that has to tell me, but look at how far you've come, in such a short time. Look at how much you've been able to accomplish even in just the last 6 months. And that's, that team aspect is so important, at least on mine. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more. And I think especially the bigger you go, that the team you have is everything. Like doing door-to-door transactions, right? It's pretty small scale. I can teach most people. But it's funny that now that I got into real estate investing 5 years ago, and people are asking me about, how are you doing this fund? How are you running these pro formas? And I'm like, dude, you're out of your mind if you think I'm
I'm
doing your
not.
pro
I'm not.
forma. Yeah, you're losing it. Like, and they're like,
Yeah.
how are you getting the PPM? I'm like, you're out of your mind if you think I'm writing the PPM, bro. Like, I'm paying 50K to a SEC firm to do that. Like, and it's all like
Yeah.
the bigger you go, the more you understand. My lane is this. I'm great as a GM. I'm phenomenal at galvanizing. I'm not
Yep.
gonna run pro formas. I'm not gonna find the off market. I'll talk to brokers and I do
Uh,
relationships. I keep people on task, but like execution in specific sectors, like, dude, I would never put investors' money in my pro forma. Hell no. Like, I'm getting the 20-year room dude who's done that. And it's just
yep.
that's what people don't understand is like, dude, I gotta figure out how to do all that. No, no, no. Like, you gotta be willing to play your role great and know where you fit in the team, and be a
Yeah.
great teammate or team leader. But either one of those is gonna help you go further.
Yeah. That's Yeah. I was on a phone call yesterday with a buddy that I went to high school with. We've taken different directions, and he's actually a grad student at Utah State University in their ag department. And he was asking me about the business and stuff, and I mentioned to him, yeah, we have I have X amount of employees, and he goes, oh wow, that's cool. Like, what, you thought I was doing all this by myself? Like, absolutely not. I can't do this by myself. But that's funny. Let's I just to kind of for the last little bit that we're on here, let's step it back a notch and kind of talk to the starter, the person who has an idea or the one who wants to get into sales. Um, Taking into note your journey and the success that you've accumulated over the course of the past 6, 7, 8, or 9 years. How did you start? What were the tips or tricks that you found to be successful or add to your success when you were starting out? Or, what things didn't you do? What errors did you have? What dummy taxes did you pay? We'll at least talk about taxes in some way, shape, or form or another here. But what dummy taxes did you pay that you wish you would have done differently?
Yeah. Oh man. All the freaking things
Because
I've messed up on
there's
over the
so
years.
many.
Yeah, I remember I was on a podcast for a corporate training in Vivint the other day, and the guy had asked me, he's like, have you messed up? And I was like, yeah, dude, I've messed up more than I've won,
uh,
but
yeah.
it doesn't look like that on paper, but I feel
No.
it.
No.
um, I would say the one of the things that I did that for sure impacted me on my trajectory and helped me stay really grounded. A lot of people get into, this space, and it's very, I either want to have all the answers or I'm just going to dip my toes in. And I don't think you can be in either end of that extreme. I said when I came into the game, hey, I will give this 5 years, just like I'd go to a university for 4. I'm going to play for 5, and I'm going to play all out for 5. And I'm going to go again after every bit of information. I'm unconditionally committed to 5. And that helped me so much because we've all heard the cliche, right? Like, people way overestimate what they can do in 1, but underestimate what they can do 5. And
Sure.
there's just so much conditioning that happens and becoming that happens. And I've seen people as I've gotten there that they're just right on the edge of their breakthrough, but because they don't have the extra 3 years of buffer of sight that they're projecting, they make decisions that are absolutely detrimental because they're so short-sighted. And it's, I have to optimize this opportunity for this 3 6 month window instead of building the foundation that could actually help it succeed over the longevity of its purpose. Um, that would be what I say, like, for sure, that mentality that I went in and just committed, like, for not a crazy amount, but like, hey, I'm here for 5. I will win no matter what. If I get my teeth kicked in this year, next year, the year after, like, I'll find a way to win. Helped a ton. On the flip side of that, as I got good and had some success, human capital and scaling people is a never ending puzzle, and
Yeah.
I
But it's also an
definitely
important it's also an important puzzle piece. I think it is one of the most
it's
important puzzle pieces.
essential, and I that's a whole other conversation. But I think, the next 10, 20, 15 years,
Sure.
that's probably the jobs that'll be the most they'll still be around with AI and all the things that are going to be filled from a technology standpoint, is who can actually deal with people. But the thing that I wish I would have done earlier and that I failed over and over and over and over again, and I still fail all the time with, is people. You've got to give energy to people that want the result that the energy would output. And I wanted people to win more than they wanted to win. And it just doesn't work. You can't start the fire for them. You can't get them to go where they don't want to go. You have got to be aware and okay with, what does somebody want, even if that doesn't fit where you think their potential is. And just be okay with empowering them the way that they want to be empowered, the way that they want to be led, and creating the career that they want. Because you can shove all this energy and hope and strategy into the wrong person. I tried it multiple times, but it just, if it's not what they want, like, they're not head dead set on that objective, like, it doesn't matter. And obviously tons of other failures, but that was definitely where I lost massive amounts of time and energy and stress.
I think that's even on like a personal level within family members and different things, there are different things that come up, different events or different ventures. And for me, I've had to really understand as well. If someone doesn't want that for them, I can't make them want that for them. Even though I can see the potential outcome, I know what that might look like, whether that's monetarily, emotionally, or spiritually, but I can't force that upon someone. And I would echo your words. I think if you are kind of in that contemplation phase where you're trying to figure out if you want to do something or you don't want to do something, I think if you have to contemplate it, you probably shouldn't do it unless you're weighing the options and trying to figure out if it's a calculated risk you're going to take. But if you're trying to contemplate and talk yourself into it, I don't think you should do it. That would be my advice. You've got to want. That's really what it comes down to. Let's finish off. Tell us what I mean. Obviously, you talked a little bit about this real estate fund you're starting. Tell us what other projects you've got in the works. Tell us a little bit about the sales organization if anyone's interested to hit you up so they can do a little bit of sales and experience some of that success. But tell us about some of the projects you're working on and what you're excited about.
Yeah, dude, I'm jacked on life right now. I honestly feel super blessed. Like, legitimately, I feel like I've got a great thing, got a beautiful family. But from a work standpoint, I feel super blessed. Our sales organization has grown a ton. I think there's some really cool stuff happening macro market wise with Vivint, but in the Midwest, there's a huge gap for us to build a really, really cool, awesome program where, if you want to be a part of something that has massive resources, but it's in startup phase, like,
Yeah.
this is as cool as it gets. We basically, it feels like I'm in a time machine. I get to, like, see what is Vivint, how does it work, what it's done in Provo, but, like, I get to, like, take I know what it can be and just, like, plug it here where nobody has ever heard of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, and it's a cool feeling. From the real estate side, the fund we're super stoked on. We already have, 5 deals in it that we and my partners and I had already, like, closed the land. It's underwritten. It's done. that will sell into the fund to just be grand
Cool.
slams. It's a project that, we want to do this for a long time, and it's kind of a phase out for my partners from their 25 and 30 years of business in their sectors as being elite players, that this is more catered towards what they want to do the rest of their careers. And there's an awesome opportunity because we're small, right? We want to bring that type of experience to the non-institutional investor. And I think that's something I've been passionate about from the door-to-door space of taking somebody from zero to breaking their paradigms is, hey, you might not ever be the quarter million minimum LP player with a major institution, but we want to have really sexy investments with awesome opportunities, um, and obviously there's limits, but for more of the everyday person. So
Sure.
if there's a level that you're looking to get some alternative higher returns, but with operators, like we're doing some cool stuff there. And then obviously the relationship side, I think that's something I'm super jacked on too. Just connecting more with guys like you and going to more events and really building that brand and seeing the friendships and the cool stuff that people are doing. I think that's just super fun. Like I love seeing you freaking crush it, and it makes me want to go bigger, dude. It's fun to see people
Yeah.
you respect kill it.
It yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's fun to get to know people like you and other people that I have on my podcast or other clients that we advise and just see them win. And once you get to a level where you are winning, it's cool because everyone else wants everyone to win. And
Yeah.
that's what I absolutely love. I couldn't be more appreciative of your time, Ty. Thank you for hopping on Slacking Off today. And like I said earlier, hopefully everyone else has been able to tell that here on Slacking Off, we do everything but slack off. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for tuning in to Slackin' Off with Brady Slack.